here we go again. But we are studying the book of Numbers, chapter 31, beginning at verse 25. The backstory of this is that God has commissioned an attack on Midian. Midian is here, over in the Transjordan area, okay? And the Midianites are generally described as cattle raisers, or they're a nomadic type of people also, but there are some settled cities in Midian. And so God's commissioned them to go and attack them because the Midianite women enticed the Israelite men, the Hebrew men, into worshiping other gods. And so God got mad at them for doing that. And so now they have to be wiped out. And so God sent them to wipe them all out, and they wiped out all the men, but they kept the women and children and brought them back. And they brought back all the cattle and the sheep and everything else that they captured from the Midianites. And Moses was really angry because they didn't kill everybody. He said, "What are you leaving the women, alive for? After all, they're the ones who enticed our men away," and da-da-da-da. So the decree was they would kill all the women, and they would kill all the male children, and they would leave the virgins as spoils of war. Okay? And that seems so, what? But we're still talking genocide today, right? And there have been genocides that have been committed based on this scripture and on other scriptures that promoted genocide in the Old Testament. So we have to be very careful about, it's in the Bible, so it's okay. And the presumption is that if it was okay for them back then it's certainly fine for us to do it today if the opportunity presents itself. And there are many cultures that have done this over and over and over again, ours included. It's a poor excuse as far as I'm concerned, that just because somebody else did it, that it's okay for us to do it, or that the precedent was in the Bible. I'm sorry, not every precedent that's in the Bible should instruct us on how to live our lives today. So now this is where we are, okay? So they haven't killed the virginal children, and they have not killed any of the livestock, and they haven't disposed of all the booty that they captured. So what do you do with it? Well, now they've got to figure out what to do with it, okay? And that's where we pick it up at chapter 25. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "You and Eleazar the priest and the heads of the ancestral houses of the congregation make an inventory of the plunder captured, both human and animal. Divide the plunder into 2 parts between the warriors who went out into battle and all the congregation. From the share of the warriors who went out into battle, set aside as tribute for the Lord 1 item out of every 500, whether person, oxen, donkey, or sheep. Take it from their half and give it to Eleazar the priest as an offering to the Lord. But from the Israelites, half you shall take, 1 out of every 50, whether persons, oxen, donkey, sheep, all animals, and give them to the Levites who perform the duties of the tabernacle of the Lord." What does this mean? It means that the priest Eleazar is determining how to divvy up everything. The warriors get a bigger share, okay? The general populations get a lesser share, and then out of those shares, then there's another divvying up for the priesthood and for the Levites. This is like the IRS telling you what you can keep. All right. Like I say, some things have never changed. Then Moses and Eleazar the priest did as the Lord had commanded Moses. The plunder remaining from the spoils that the troops had taken total 675,000 sheep. That's a lot of sheep. 72,000 oxen. Okay, 61,000 donkeys, and 32,000 persons, in all women who had not known a man by sleeping with him. All right, when you start looking at these kinds of numbers, understand that the troops that went into Midian numbered 12,000. Okay, 1,000 from each tribe. So what we're talking about comparatively is a modern division. Okay? This is a pretty big culture for one division to take in those days. Pretty big. So, I mean, what we're looking at here, and the scholars have looked at this and they felt like, you know, that's a little much. And so these numbers might be exaggerated. Okay? Remember now how biblical writers use numbers. So when you get to 1,000, what they're saying basically is that's all of them. Okay? So it may not necessarily be 1,000, but it's all the sheep that they took, all the oxen that they took. Okay? So you can break it down that way. But remember that the numbers that are presented in the Old Testament don't comport to numbers as we use them today.
So in the beginning, when God told them to go in there and wipe the people out,
Yeah.
he told them to wipe everyone out.
Yeah.
And so many times when they don't do what they're told, they're punished. But here he doesn't punish them for not following what he said.
Oddly enough.
Ambiguous.
Yeah, there is an awful lot of ambiguity and capriciousness that you find throughout this. So God is not always consistent. Okay? There are times when God shows a tremendous amount of mercy. Most of the time, God does not. Okay. As for the Israelites' half, which Moses separated from that of the troops, the congregation's half was 337,500 sheep. These numbers sound so precise, 36,000 oxen, 30,500 donkeys, 16,000 persons. 16,000 persons. Okay, if these are just the girls who didn't sleep with a man, think of the size of the population that they must have defeated with one division. They've got more virgins than the division that they sent in. So
And nobody was killed either.
Huh?
None of the troops
Oh,
were
yeah,
killed.
none of the troops were killed. There was not one casualty among the Israelites when they did this. And so it puts this whole narrative into the suspicious category. Okay? It really does. Then the officers who were over the thousands of the army, the commanders of thousands and the commanders of hundreds, approached Moses and said to Moses, "Your servants have counted the warriors who are under our command, and not one is missing." Okay, that's Billy's point. Yeah, not one is missing. So they don't even have any missing in action. Okay? Typically, back then, okay, if you took an army to war, you would lose maybe at least a third of them to disease. Okay? We lost more people to disease in our Civil War than we lost in combat. So, I mean, not one was missing? Sorry. Okay. Okay, and we have brought the Lord's offering, and each of us found, not stole, just happened to, found, articles of gold armlets and bracelets, signet rings, earrings, and pendants to make atonement for ourselves before the Lord. Why do they have to make atonement for themselves? Well, they got to make atonement for themselves because they've killed all these people, which means that they are unclean. All right. Moses and Eleazar the priest received the gold from them in all form of crafted articles, and all the gold of the offering that they offered to the Lord from the commanders of the thousands, commanders of hundreds, was 16,750 shekels. That's a lot of shekels. The troops had taken plunder for themselves, so Moses and Eleazar the priest received the gold from the commanders of thousands and of hundreds and brought it into the tent of meeting as a memorial for the Israelites before the Lord. Well, at least they didn't make a golden calf.
What I want to know is if they killed all these thousands of, supposedly thousands and thousands of men and women, what happened to all the bodies? Did they just leave them where they
Yep.
lay?
Yep. Generally speaking, they would leave them on the field. They would plunder them, and they would leave them on the field. Normally, what would happen, 12,000 men go in and commit, they do the invasion. What most people don't understand about ancient warfare is that after the men go in, the women go in, and they're the ones who plunder the bodies. Okay? So nobody's interested in burying the dead, they just leave that for the animals. But whatever is valuable on the dead, the women are the ones who collect it. And they're supposed to go looking for their own wounded and dead as well. But that was the business of camp followers. Okay, among other business. So, anybody got any questions about this? Because we're going to get into something else about we're starting to look at the overall strategy for the conquest of the Promised Land as we get into the following chapters. But this victory over Midianites was pretty substantial, and it's just fantastic numbers that are in there. There's no way that they would have collected all of that out of there. Okay, now modern day, the closest relatives that we have to Midianites would be the Saudis, Arabs. Okay, so if you want to put it in that context. And understand now, this has all been codified, it's all been written down. So if you want to look for ancient animosities to justify whatever you're doing lately, that's what they're doing. And if you want to know why the Palestinians were so brutal in their attack on Israel, it's because they both have this history. And they can justify anything that they want to against each other biblically if they wanted to. The Israelis have moved beyond that. But Arabs and Palestinians generally have not. Okay. That's, by the way, one of the primary reasons also because of this intense generational hatred that Arab states do not accept any Palestinian refugees. Now, I met Palestinians when I was over there who were in another country, but they were not living as refugees, they were professionals. Okay, moving on to 32. Now the Reubenites and the Gadites owned a great number of cattle. When they saw that the land of Jazer and the land of Gilead was a good place for cattle. Anybody remember Gilead from some of our hymns? Gilead, sweet Gilead.
Sheep.
Yep, okay.
My interpretation says sheep.
Sheep.
Large flocks of sheep.
They had those, yep. But they said it was good for them. Okay, so some translations it's cattle and sometimes it's sheep. Okay. The Gadites and the Reubenites came and spoke to Moses, to Eleazar the priest, and to the leaders of the congregation, saying, Ataroth, Dibon, Jazir, Nimrah, Heshbon, Eliah, Sibam, Nebo, and Beon. The land that the Lord subdued before the congregation of Israel is a land for cattle, and your servants have cattle. They continued, if we have found favor in your sight, let this land be given to your servants for a possession. Do not make us cross the Jordan. Oh, okay. You know, if you're going to capture all this livestock, you've still got to feed them. Right? Okay. So the place where you got them from has got food for the cattle and the sheep. Okay? And so, hey, we didn't burn the fields, you know. How about we go back in there and, you know, we can raise the crops in there. They said, we'll be content to stay over here on the west side or the east side of the Jordan. We're content to stay over on the east side of the Jordan and raise cattle and sheep and everything, and don't worry about divvying up parcels from Canaan. For us, we'll be happy to stay over on the other side. Well, but Moses said to the Gadites and to the Reubenites, shall your brothers go to war while you sit here? Ah, draft dodgers, see? That's what's going on. Okay, why will you discourage the hearts of the Israelites from going over into the land that the Lord has given them? Your fathers did this when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to see the land. When they went up to the Wadi Eshcol and saw the land, they discouraged the hearts of the Israelites from going into the land that the Lord had given them. The Lord's anger was kindled on that day. He swore, saying, surely none of the people who came up out of Egypt from 20 years old and up shall see the land that I swore to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, because they had not unreservedly followed me. None except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, and Joshua, son of Nun, for they have unreservedly followed the Lord, and the Lord's anger was kindled against Israel, and he made them wander in the wilderness for 40 years until all the generation had been done the evil in the sight of the Lord disappeared. Now you, a brood of sinners, having risen in place of your fathers to increase the Lord's fierce anger against Israel, if you turn away from following him, he will again abandon them in the wilderness, and you will destroy all this people. So you're putting the whole country at risk because you're a bunch of draft dodgers and you're just going to raise cattle and sheep, you know, and you're not even going to go into the promised land. So what's up with that? And so then they came up to him and said, we will build sheepfolds here for our flocks and towns for our little ones, but we will take up arms as a vanguard before the Israelites until we have brought them into their place. So they're going to participate in the war. Okay, in fact, put us out in the front. Put us, you know, we're not draft dodgers. We're willing to be the upfront people. Meanwhile, our little ones will stay in the fortified towns because of the inhabitants of the land. We will not return to our homes until all the Israelites have obtained their inheritance. We will not inherit with them on the other side of the Jordan and beyond, because our inheritance has come to us on this side of the Jordan to the east. All right, so what they're saying is a couple of things. First of all, we're willing to be the first ones into the battle, and we're not coming back until the land's captured. Okay, that's thing number one. But they start talking about fortified cities. Now, these are cities that have been burned, so they've got to be rebuilt. Okay, so what they're doing is they're setting up fortified cities on this side as a way of protecting the flank and rear of the people who are going to do the invasion over here. So it's kind of a twofold thing. We will secure your flanks while we head in, and so they're doing a double duty. Instead of just what the other troops are doing, they're doing twice as much. Okay?
It's interesting that Moses made that decision on his own. I
Yeah,
mean, without consulting God. I mean, after all they've been through,
yeah,
you would certainly think he would ask God what he thought about this plan.
it's true, but you know, at the same time, Moses is under a sentence of death because he didn't fully obey God. He's getting to a point in his life where apparently he thinks he can do this sort of thing. Okay? And that's one of the reasons why God is replacing him. Because Moses is making some independent judgments. Okay, at the same time, I thought it was a pretty good motivational speech to keep these guys in the fight. So, you know. So Moses said to them, if you do this, if you take up arms to go before the Lord for the war, and all those of whom you bear arms cross the Jordan before the Lord until he has driven out his enemies before him and the land is subdued before the Lord, then after that you may return and be free of obligation to the Lord and to Israel, and this land shall be your possession before the Lord. But if you do not do this, you have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out. Ever hear an evangelist say that? There it is. Okay, he's quoting Moses. Be sure your sins will find you out. Okay, and we're looking right now in our society, we are learning that whether or not people bear any responsibility or repercussions, their sins are finding them out. Okay, the laptop is real. Anyway. Okay. Build towns for your little ones and folds for your flocks, but do what you have promised. And the Gadites and the Reubenites said to Moses, your servant will do as my Lord commands. Our little ones, our wives, our flocks, and our livestock shall remain there in the towns of Gilead, but your servants will cross over, everyone armed for war to do battle for the Lord, just as my Lord orders. So, Moses gave the command concerning them to Eleazar the priest, to Joshua son of Nun, to the heads of the ancestral houses of Israel, the Israelite tribes. Moses said to them, if the Gadites and the Reubenites, everyone armed for battle before the Lord, will cross over the Jordan with you, and the land shall be subdued before you, then you shall give them the land of Gilead for possession. But if they will not cross over with you armed, they shall have possessions among you in the land of Canaan. Now that doesn't make sense, but anyway. So if they don't do what they said, then they're going to have to be on the west side of the Jordan. But they still, it means that they didn't fight for it. I don't know. It's crazy. Anyway. The Gadites and the Reubenites answered, saying, as the Lord has spoken to your servants, so we will do. We will cross over armed before the Lord into the land of Canaan, but the possession of our inheritance shall remain with us on this side of the Jordan. Moses gave to them, to the Gadites and the Reubenites, and to half tribes of Manasseh and son of Joseph, the kingdom of King Sihon of the Amorites, the kingdom of King Og of Bashan, the land and its towns with the territories of the surrounding towns. And the Gadites rebuilt Dibon, Ataroth, Aror, Artoth Shofan. This is great. I love doing it. Jazar, Jogbaha, Beth Nimrah, and Beth Haran, fortified cities and folds for sheep. And the Reubenites rebuilt Heshbon, Eliah, Kiriathim, Nebu, and Baal Meon, some names being changed to protect the innocent. And Sibnah, and they gave names to the towns that they rebuilt. The descendants of Machir, son of Manasseh, went to Gilead, captured it, and dispossessed the Amorites who were there. So Moses gave Gilead to Machir, son of Manasseh, and he settled there. Jair, son of Manasseh, went and captured their villages and renamed them Havoth Jair. And Nobah went and captured Kenath and its villages and renamed Nobat after himself. So there you go. All right. Now, what's going on here? There are some other issues that are going to go on with this particular territory. The cities that are established on the east side of the Jordan, okay, we call it Transjordan today. And at one time, it was a part of the Kingdom of Jordan. Well, that part still is the Kingdom of Jordan. On the West Bank, there's an enclave of Palestinians that Jordan used to control, but does not any longer. On the West Bank, or on the East Bank of the Jordan, are going to be Levitical cities, where the Levites are concentrated. Now, they're not all concentrated. The Levites are all through the Promised Land. And every little village, every township is going to have a cadre of Levites. Now remember, the Levites are the true believers, and so they're the ones who are going to be monitoring what everybody's doing in the various towns. But the Levitical cities that are on the east bank of the Jordan are going to be sanctuary cities. So not the same as what we have today, okay? If you're accused of killing somebody, then someone is commissioned to go kill you, and you might be innocent of first-degree murder, it might be manslaughter or something like that, but you can't get an adjudication in your trial unless you go to a sanctuary city. And once you're in the sanctuary city, then the avenger cannot kill you. And in the sanctuary city, there's going to be a hearing, and they'll decide whether or not you are guilty. And if you are guilty, then the avenger can kill you. But if you're not guilty, you are still stuck in the sanctuary city, because if you ever leave it, then the avenger can come after you again.
Is that still today?
No, no, not by any means.
Supposedly.
Not by any means. You know, Rafa is no longer a sanctuary city. This is, you know, awful, what's going on over there. It's just terrible. But the closest thing that anybody has to sanctuary is Israel, because that's the only place you're going to get a fair trial. You know, the
This
trial
is-
and the other stuff is under Sharia law, and Sharia law isn't always just.
Dennis, this is a stupid question. Okay, they're not in the promised land yet,
No,
right?
no, but they have pretty well taken out the east side of the Jordan. They've pretty well controlled a lot of territory on the east side, and that's good land, okay? Another thing to know is that they are still getting manna and quail. Now, it doesn't sound to me like these people are scraping manna. Okay, it sounds to me like these guys are eating high on the ox.
So they're not really, they don't care if they get to the promised land.
No, they do. They care very much about getting to the promised land, okay? But they're not starving. They're not out in the
They're not
wilderness of
desperate,
Zin
right.
or anything like that. They are, you know, these people are capable of waging war, which is not cheap, by the way. It has never been cheap to wage war. So these people are resourced and armed and trained to do this, this invasion. They have the rations that they need to do the invasion. They have the weapons that they need to do the invasion. This is not some ragtag outfit. This is some local militia. This is a big deal, and everybody in Canaan is worried about them, and they should be.
Why these countries, the Middle East, is it because of lack of education or?
No, it's the type of
deep-
education.
Deep embedded hatred,
Mhm.
that they're still doing this today.
Yes.
I mean, they're civilized, but they're not, in a way.
True.
I mean,
I don't know if you,
They
Have-
think they're very civilized.
well, they think their civilization is much longer and older than ours,
Right,
so.
they're-
well, it very
Far
well could be,
superior to
but
us.
we, you know, they're going from country to country hating each other. and
Yes.
Killing each other. and
Yes.
We don't go from state to state hating each other. and-
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Not
I mean,
anymore.
we did during the Civil War,
Yes.
of course, but I'm talking about this day. They have a history.
They have a
Yeah.
long history, and that's
Yeah,
part of
what
their
I'm saying.
civilization.
Is it because of the history that they're still doing this?
The history is used as an excuse.
Yeah.
The history is locked and set, and they don't learn from it except to amplify the animosities that they've had in their history. Okay, if you look at the curriculum for Palestinian children, and in most Arab countries, they are taught absolute hatred of anything Jewish. They are taught from an early age to hate anything Jewish, to hate Jewish people, to wish them nothing but ill, and to do it if you can get away with it. And if you can't get away with it, but you do it, then you're a martyr. So this is it's a travesty. You know, I think one of the horrible things about modern history is that Islam has, because it has a biblical base, Islam has the potential of being a beneficial religion, but it has been taken over and it has been defined by those who are not beneficial.
Does the Quran teach them to do that?
Yes,
To kill each other?
yes, but so does the Bible. I mean, you know, that's what we've been reading. So we can criticize the Quran for advocating this sort of thing, but you can also see in the biblical text, and especially if it's Torah, which is the law, okay, then this defines a mindset. And we need to be very careful that we are not in modern society so much informed by this kind of past as our forefathers have been. Okay.
You know, there are Arabs and there are Palestinians. What
Arab
what
is
defines Palestinians?
where they come from.
Why are they so
They are Arabs who come from Palestine.
different that nobody wants? I mean, it's,
Because this incredible hatred against Israel is one that poisons. I mean, I'm not saying that the Arabs generally don't agree, but the Palestinians are much more activist in this hatred. And if you see what Hezbollah has done to Lebanon, which is not what the Lebanese people necessarily, they're not friends of Israel, but they sure don't like this idea of Hezbollah taking over their country and just turning it into this anti-Semitic cesspool, which they've done. You know, the same thing in Gaza. I mean, they have totally ripped off the people of Gaza. The people who are living in Qatar, who are the heads of Hamas, are billionaires. I wonder where they got their money, you know? They didn't get it because they earned it, you know, or because they had great investments. You know, they got it because they were ripping off all the aid that was going to Gaza and Palestine. That's where they got it from. So, you know, these are not good people. Not good people. And I can understand to some extent Israel's reaction, but Israel is in a very bad neighborhood. They live in a very bad neighborhood.
But it's the land God gave.
It's the land they took in God's name. You can look at it that way too. Okay. Well, we're going to get into some more of this. The next chapter, 33, is just a recap of the Exodus, and I'm not going to get into that very much because, you know, we've basically gone over the story. So we're going to be looking more at 34 and following. We're getting down, the numbers are getting smaller as the numbers get bigger, but anyway. So we've got a few more chapters to do. But 33 is just a recap of where they went. And it's informative and very good, but it's not good enough because we still don't know where they went. You know, they suspect they went here, they suspect they went there, but some of the names of places are obscured in history. We don't know exactly where they are. So it's hard for us to really map out the route that they took as it's mapped out in chapter 33. But anyway, God bless you. See you next week. And by the way, I will not be here on the 30th. So just be prepared for it. I'll be at preaching in another church. Okay, see you later.
Thank you.